What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today it is the A to Z movie club. This A to Z is of the horror genre. Here are my picks. Let's get into it. The numbered entry is going to be 28 Days Later. I remember discovering this film when it first came out on VHS all the way back in 2003. It still holds up really well today. I think all the actors are bang on, spot on, really good. Some really emotional, weighty stuff as well in here. Even though I don't consider this to be a zombie film in any manner, if you look up the definition of a zombie film, this is not it. It is an infection movie, I will grant you that. And it did kickstart the zombie craze in the early 2000s, followed swiftly by Dawn of the Dead remake. But I feel like 28 Days Later is a just pinnacle of British horror. It's one of the best out there. The only downside is the DVD is probably the best way to watch this movie. The HD Blu-ray upgrade is not very good. The way they shot it on handheld cameras, and some really just, it hasn't really aged well in that sense. The upgrade is very grainy, very noisy, but the DVD is probably the best way to watch it. Moving on to A. Easy one this. Alien. Part haunted house in space, part slasher movie, part just all-out sci-fi. This horror film for me is one of the greatest of all time. It created one of the greatest, monsters of cinema of all time. And I think all the performances are spot on. I think the retro future stuff is really cool to look at. I think the set design's amazing. The sound effects are amazing. The sound design is great. And I think it tells an amazing story. The chest burster scene will always be etched in my brain as one of those truly horrific moments in cinema. And I think Alien really delivered one of the one of the first really true scary things I remember seeing when it concerns really kind of adult stuff in movies for me. Alien is just top tier for me. I'm always juggling Alien and Aliens when it concerns which one I prefer. But I think Alien always kind of tops it just by an edge in terms of its horror. I think as an action movie, Aliens is just perfection. But I think as a sci-fi horror, Alien is top tier. Moving on to B, we have Brain Damage. Now, I saw this for the first time this year. Brain Damage, honestly, is from the director who gave us Basket Case. So you know what you're in for. You're in for some goofy, crazy, insane creature feature nonsense. But this one's a bit more grounded. It's very much an allegory for drug addiction. You're enveloped in the story of this, this brain-eating parasite that takes control of this character, Brian. Brian is systematically helping this parasite eat brains from other unsuspecting victims. This film is so good. Like, I was not expecting anything on this level. It's one of the best creature features ever made. It's up there, for me in particular, it's up there with Critters, Alien, you get my drift, Gremlins. It's up there with the best creature monster movies, Godzilla. It's up there with the best. The parasite, he's called Elmer in this, and he speaks. One of the coolest monster characters to ever grace a screen, in my opinion. He's got soothing tones in his voice, and but he's an absolute bastard as well. But you kind of love him in a sense in this movie. He's kind of like he's the sinister antagonist in the movie, but he's almost like he's like the heartbeat of the film. I can't recommend Brain Damage enough. It's fucking brilliant. Everyone should check this out. If you're into creature features, this is a no-brainer from me. Brain Damage is absolutely spectacular, and more people need to actually fucking check it out. It's awesome. Moving on to my C pick. C's easy. It's Critters. I feel like a broken record about this movie, but this film is one of the most underappreciated monster creature feature 80s movies of all time. Its soundtrack is undeniably 80s to me, and the story of these little intergalactic furballs invading a family on a farm will never ever get old. This is my feel-good movie. This is my comfort film. I've seen this more than I can even think to count, and I will love it long into the future. Critters is so good that I cannot emphasize how much people need to check this out and give the whole franchise a go, because the sequel is good as well. But the first Critters is great as a creature feature, really underrated as a science fiction movie, but as a just amalgamation of science fiction, horror, and a little bit of comedy thrown in, it is almost, to me, pretty much an 80s perfect movie. So yeah, that's Critters. Moving on to D, it's another British horror that I think is fairly underappreciated, and that is The Descent. I can't grasp how much this film scared the shit out of me when I first saw it. This is a claustrophobic, anxiety-inducing horror film where these group of girls go into these caves to explore and they get trapped. And what they find lurking down below is horror-inducing, fear-inducing stuff. And I absolutely just love the story in this movie, how these girls have got to escape these horrible, mutant, kind of nightcrawler kind of creatures. It's absolutely fantastic. You're enveloped with atmosphere in this film. It's so good, and I can't emphasize how much this is amazing. So if you've not checked out The Descent, go and check it out. It is one of the best British horrors. It could be, most likely be the best British horror ever made, in my opinion, but that is The Descent. Moving on to E. Now, I was a bit conflicted with E because you've got The Exorcist, which is one of my favourite horror films, if not my favourite horror film of all time, or you've got a remake from a film that I cannot get enough of because it's just, I will defend you at the end of the day, and that's where I decided to pick from. Evil Dead 2013. I cannot put into words how much I love this movie from a theatre going perspective and from just a general horror fan perspective. This film has everything going for it that I wanted from an Evil Dead remake. It faithfully keeps the spirit of the original two movies and adds that tone, that really graphic, brutal, disturbing tone that I wanted from this franchise, and just goes balls to the wall with it. The kids in this get absolutely savagely brutalized. It's one of the most goriest films of its time. This film is just covered in blood. You're covered in blood by the end, and it's just an outright blast. It does not pull any punches, and it does not cut away. The kills are savage and they're brutal, and a lot of it is practical, which is really cool. So yeah, Evil Dead 2013 is my E pick. Moving on to F, I have my favourite vampire film of all time, Fright Night. What I love about this film is that it's so cool in its the way it kind of just like tells its story. It's a very cool vampire film. Jerry Dandridge is probably the coolest vampire ever put to screen. He's a fucking cool cat in this movie, and I think he's great. I love when they include horror fans in movie ideas, and the fact that Charlie is this like really cool movie, horror fan that watches this show called Fright Night, and he has to try and employ the fictional vampire killer Peter Vincent to try and prove that this vampire next door is real. That whole story, to me, I can watch it over and over again. It's so heartwarming, it's so fun, and I think you can have a really good time with it. That's Fright Night. Moving on to my G pick. This film is as much a science fiction movie as it is a monster movie, but as much as that, it is definitely a fucking horror movie. The franchise went on into a different directions moving forward, but this first movie is a horror film, and that is, of course, Godzilla 1954. Again, like Critters, I feel like a broken record with this one. This happens to be my favourite film of all time. What it did for me in terms of impact, and it opened my eyes to how good older films can be. I had a bit of a cynical, kind of naive look at films, older than the 60s. And I thought they were a bit, they're going to be too dated, they're in black and white, doesn't do it for me. But when I actually sat down and gave this movie a chance for the first time, it blew my mind of the practical effects, and all what they were doing was groundbreaking. The model, the whole like miniature thing was groundbreaking for this movie, and obviously it birthed, in my opinion, the greatest movie monster of all time, Godzilla. Everything about this film is a masterpiece to me. I think the acting is fantastic, the story is remarkable, the characters are all likable, and obviously the titular monster is epic as all things ever. So yeah, Godzilla is my G pick. It is a masterpiece. It is a staple of the monster movie genre. It created the kaiju subgenre, and I think everyone should check it out. Yeah, it came out in 1954, but for the time, and I still think even now, it holds up really fucking well. I went and watched the 4K restoration at cinema last year, and it was an absolute just blast to see this on the big screen. That's Godzilla 1954. Then we get to our H pick. For H, I have chosen The Howling. It was basically between this or Halloween, but I feel like a lot of people are going to put Halloween in there, so I thought I'd be a bit contrarian and go with my my secondary pick. The Howling, to me, it really is a just great companion werewolf film to An American Werewolf in London. It's very different, but I think it does a great justice for the werewolf mythos as much as An American Werewolf in London does. I think this is just a wonderful companion to that film. It feels like a 70s movie. Obviously, it came out in 1981. Probably was filmed in 1980, most likely, or 1979. But yeah, this film is fantastic. The werewolf transformation is pretty much not as good as American Werewolf in London, but pretty much close as you can get. But a very different vibe. In this film, the transformation feels like they're excited to transform into their werewolf form. They're really excited to make that metamorphosis, and I think it makes these werewolves a lot more sinister in nature. It's like a collective cult of werewolves in this movie, and they are all really excited to feed on the guests that they've invited there. Very great movie. I think Dee Wallace is fantastic. Dee Wallace is great in most things that she's in. But yeah, I just think this is fantastic. Howling is my H pick. Moving on to I, we have It Follows. Now, I was going to pick a different movie for this letter, but I wanted to keep it within my collection. So I felt like I have to own stuff. I want to own it if it's in the list. So I was going to pick the French Extremity movie Inside, but I don't own that because it's hard to get at the moment. So I opted to pick It Follows. It feels like a John Carpenter movie to me. It really does. It feels like it was made in the 80s. It's got that 80s vibe, and I just love the concept of this sexually transmitted demon, and basically it will just follow you until it catches you and kills you. But to rid yourself of it, you have to have sex with people and basically spread it to another person. It's a great concept. There's some wonderful scares in this film that are still unsettling to this day. I just love this movie. Just the idea of someone you recognise that you don't believe is alive anymore, that is just creepily walking towards you and just staring at you with a literally lifeless stare. Terrifying as all hell. It Follows is an indie darling, an indie masterpiece in my opinion. Everyone should check it out. I fucking love this movie. That's It Follows. My J pick, I'm a bit cheating on the J pick. I'm cheating a little bit. Because this film has got two different titles. It's called, in UK it's called Roadkill. But in America, in North America, it's called Joyride. I'm just going to go by its J title for this. I'm just cheating because I couldn't think of anything else. So Joyride, aka Roadkill, is my J pick. This was a really big surprise for me. I heard about it being pretty decent. I do like road horror films. I think they're pretty interesting. This film was really fun. Really good. It's about a prank gone wrong. These two guys, brothers they prank a truck driver while they're on the road. And it turns into an absolute just horror, tension-filled nightmare. This film is very much just great at its suspense. It's not that much in terms of the kills, gore thing. It does have some of that, but it's mostly in its tension and in its suspense. It's very well done in that regard. I really enjoyed this film. I thought this is engrossing from start to finish. I think it's just the right time. I don't think it outstays its welcome at all. It's just at the right length, and I think a lot of people probably missed out on this film. I think it's just fucking fantastic. That's Joyride, aka Roadkill. Fucking awesome movie. Moving on to my K pick, and that will be 1933's King Kong. This film is a masterpiece for the time. It really does amazing things for the time, and I only saw this about 3 years ago for the first time, and it was just really unbelievable how good this movie is. Being so old now and so beloved, and it was so ahead of its time as well. It's almost like a tragic horror love story in some regard. It's very like that in my opinion. It's got some horrible moments where King Kong's knocking the people off the side of this ravine and they're falling down this pit. The whole reveal of Kong and the horror that instills in the characters is just fucking awesome. The fight between the T-Rex and Kong is one of the greatest cinematic fights of all time. The stop motion animation is absolutely groundbreaking in this movie. I can't recommend King Kong enough to anybody. Yes, it's from the 30s. Yes, its effects haven't really aged well, even though the stop animation is still fucking a marvel to look at, considering this is a 30s movie. But I recommend this to everybody. It is a fantastic, fantastic movie. And some people might not really consider it to be in the horror genre, but it's a monster movie. And it was promoted as this, like, sort of horror film for all the time. So I'm just putting it in my horror picks. So yeah, that is K, that is King Kong. Moving on to L. And we have Last Night in Soho. I had a great time with this film. I saw this in the cinema when it came out, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It's one of the best looking films I've seen in a long time. It looks beautiful, and its set design and its costume design is absolutely wonderful. I love the characters in this movie. This movie is obviously a film of two halves. You've got Eloise. She's just staying in this woman's flat or his home as a little bed sit while she's at university, and it's like she starts having these weird visions, these dreams of someone else being in that space and horrible things happening. It's almost like a mystery ghost film, but it's handled so well. The directing is so good. There's amazing cinematography. The characters are all really cool, and you're just gripped from start to finish. It's such a great movie, and I absolutely love it. This film is so good. Performances are amazing, and if you look behind the scenes of this movie, how stuff was shot, considering they use reflections, but Eloise is swapped out with someone else, etc., etc. There's some amazing special effects and practical stuff going on in this film that I think people that are into the behind the scenes stuff will get a massive kick out of. But as a film, this is a fantastic movie and one of the best films of last year. That's Last Night in Soho. For my M pick, it probably go to no surprise to no one, is Malignant. I can't get over how much this film means to me and how much I had a massive smile on my face from start to finish. This film, it kind of in its marketing makes it seem like it's going to be a typical James Wan horror, haunted house horror fare, but it's nothing like that whatsoever. It kind of has elements of that in the beginning of the movie, but this is basically a love letter to every form of horror you can think of. 70s, 80s, 90s, you name it. There is a little kind of touch of that in this film. But overall, this is a kind of love letter to Italian giallo cinema and obviously the slashers of the 80s. I absolutely adore this film. This film had everything for me. I've never been entertained by a horror film like this, probably in the last 6 years or so. You know when there's that film that comes out just at the right time? This was it for me, and it was the right film at the right time. And yeah, I can't get over how much I fucking love this movie. The antagonist in this film deserves to be up there as a horror icon, because he's cool as fuck. Like, he's such a cool fucking villain. He really is. And I don't want to spoil anything if anyone's not seen this film, but I just thought it was absolutely just perfect movie to me. Like, perfect. Some people might argue the dialogue's hokey, but I believe the hokey dialogue was intentional, and they're having fun with this movie, and it looked like it was a blast to bloody make, and it's a fucking blast to watch. It is so much fun. Malignant is my M pick, and it is like just one of my favourite horror films ever at this point. Moving on to my N pick, and that will be 1986, Night of the Creeps. Yeah, I really love this movie. This movie has everything that I want in a kind of 80s creature feature. It is absolutely fantastic. I love all the characters. The idea of this parasite that basically takes control of the host, and the host becomes this zombie-like, basically becomes a zombie in this movie. It's a very unique take on the zombie genre, and it's just really fun. This film is so much fun. The practical effects are fantastic, and it has Tom Atkins in this film, and he plays this just really cool police officer who's this really cool cat, and you fucking love Tom. I love Tom Atkins in this movie. He's so cool in this film, and yeah, the overall film is just so good. I cannot say any more than that, guys. Night of the Creeps is absolutely fucking fantastic. We're on our O pick, and I'm picking for O. I am picking the 1976 original Omen. It took me until this year to watch this film for the first time, and I'm glad I got around to watching it, because this is one of the best films of this type. Kind of, it stands alongside The Exorcist as one of these kind of almost, you know, demonic kind of movies, these like possession movies. But obviously Damien isn't possessed, he is just fucking an evil bastard. But yeah, this film is haunting from the get-go, and it really kind of has a great slow build until you realise that this kid is just a fucking evil bastard. But this film is so well done. It's very slow, it envelops you in atmosphere, and you're just following this the dad of Damien, and he realises that he has to kill Damien because Damien is the son of the devil. You're in that, you realise that he's conflicted by this thing he has to do, and the film just unfolds and unfolds, and it's just unbelievably haunting, and it's one of the best films of its kind. And yeah, I really fucking love this movie, and it deserves to be on my A to Z list. That's The Omen. Next up we have our P. Now P, I was struggling with P.
Not 2P, but I was struggling with the letter P.
But I picked a disturbing anime movie called Perfect Blue. This film is a psychological horror about a J-pop sensation that decides to quit being in this pop band, and then wants to do acting. And it's about her kind of dealing with her lifestyle change, but it's also about this weird kind of stalker character basically stalking her and doing horrible things. And it is a horrible movie in that sense. In terms of a psychological horror sense, it is fucking savage. But this film is just wonderful. In its animation is beautiful, the story is bleak but really engaging and engrossing, and yeah, I just think it's just wonderful. It's one of my favourite anime movies ever. Mimi, the main character, is you feel sympathetic for her, you feel sad for her, you fear for her life. This is actually a terrifying movie in what it portrays, and it really makes you kind of realise that sometimes these celebrities are stalked, and it can be a dangerous thing. This film is terrifying in that regard, but I fucking love this film. That's Perfect Blue. I cheated again for this pick. I cheated. Q, I couldn't think of anything for Q, so I picked A Quiet Place. I know it begins with A, but delete the A, and we'll just say Quiet Place Part 2. One of the rare occasions where a sequel is pretty much better than the original. I had a massive blast with Quiet Place Part 2. I thought it was just so much fun. The amount of tension in this movie is off the wall. Really, there is moments where you're like clutching at, you're basically gripping your chair, just hoping that they get away, they get away safe. There is some horrible, scary moments in this that really were like, I'm holding my breath because I don't want to fucking breathe because I might get killed by this fucking monster. This film is great. I just loved it from start to finish. I'm looking forward to part 3. Hopefully they'll have a perfect trilogy on their hands, because I think the first one was great. This one was even better. Yeah, I fucking love this movie. It's fantastic. That is my cheating Q pick. Quiet Place Part 2. Next up we have R. Now for R, I have picked Return of the Living Dead Part 2. Now, to preface this, Return of the Living Dead, the original, has been my favourite zombie film for years. Never got around to seeing this until quite recently. Return of the Living Dead Part 2. And as you can see, it's on this list for R, which means it has topped the original. I think this film is just so much fun as a zombie film compared to the original. The original had its comic moments as well, you know, I can feel myself rat and stuff like that, you know, brains, send more paramedics. This film is just so much more than the first one to me. I think it has a lot more laugh out loud moments. It has some more really terrifying moments. Everything about this film was just so much fun. I had so much fun with it. I think everyone who's into zombies should watch this film. It is fucking brilliant. And it's such a great sequel to the first one, in that it brings back actors from the first movie who are main characters, but they play different characters in this movie, but are still main characters. There's one actor in this film. He's in the original as well. I forget his name, but he's so funny in this movie. He overacts to 11, but it's so much fun to watch. It's so funny. Yeah, I adore this film. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It's either on par or better than the original. I haven't really come to a decision yet. I'll have to watch them back to back to really decide. But I chose Return of the Living Dead Part 2 as my R pick. Moving on to S. Now S, I could have gone either one way or another. I could have gone super easy with Scream, for example, or I could have gone a bit, something a bit different. Maybe I could pick Suspiria, Suspiria 2018, the remake. I love that film as well. But I settled for, just to shine more light on this movie because it's great, I settled for Summer of '84. Really, really great mystery horror about a group of kids that believe their next door neighbour is a child killer. It's so cool. So much fun, so much tension in certain moments. The last third act is just absolute fucking horror. Just horror 101. It's just so good. Absolutely love this movie. If you've not seen it, I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. If you like Goonies or Stand By Me and you want more of a horror twist, this is the film for you guys. It is fantastic and everyone needs to check it out. That's Summer of '84. Now we're on T in the alphabet, and that is The Thing. Of course it's going to be The Thing. What else could it be? The Thing. A film where if you're arguing practical effects versus CGI, this is the film to prove practical effects can hold up if they're done right. This film is a masterpiece in horror suspense. Even the quiet moments, like the conversational moments where you can feel the dread seeping in and the distrust kind of building up. It's so good. It has just an amazing sequence with the blood test scene. So memorable, so fucking memorable, man. I love this film. The practical effects are just a masterpiece in just filmmaking. The defibrillator scene is just iconic in every fucking way. The way they did that whole sequence is unbelievable. The fact they had to do it twice behind the scenes is actually just mind-boggling, to be honest. But yeah, The Thing is going to be up there with some of my favourite horrors ever, and it has to be on this list for the T pick because it's just not just one of the best horror films ever, it's one of the best films ever, period. It's so good. That's The Thing. Next up we have my U pick. Now I really struggled with U because there's not many films that I know that begin with U that are horror, so I chose an anime horror, and that film is called Urusakadoji. Pretty much translates to The Wandering Kid in English, roughly. But yeah, this is about about three realms of life. You've got the human realm, you've got the beast man realm, and then you've got the demon realm. And there is a prophecy of a almighty demon god that will basically bring all the worlds together and everyone can live in harmony. But as Amano Jaku realizes that to find this demon god, he has to go into the human world and find a kid who happens to have the blood of this chosen one known as the Chojin. But he realizes that to bring these three worlds together, the Chojin actually has to destroy the three worlds first, and Anamo Jaku has to figure out whether he wants to let that happen, or if he actually wants to challenge the Chojin and end him before worlds can be destroyed. This film is notorious for being just unapologetic in its storytelling. It doesn't compromise in any way. It is fucking graphic. It's highly sexual. It is just everything you can think about that most things get banned for. This ticks that box pretty much. It is very just brutal in its execution. It doesn't compromise, like I said. It's very in your face with things, and yeah, if you can stomach all that kind of stuff, and you don't mind watching a bit of sexual content in animated form, I think this would be a really good recommend from me. The story is so compelling and so interesting, and I do just love characters like Amino. He's just a great character, and yeah, I just think the animation is fantastic for the time. This came in, like, I think the 80s, like 1988 or something, 1989, something like that. But yeah, it's we don't get anime like this anymore. This is a, you know, this is lost. No, it's not lost to time, because you can get this on DVD, but this is a bootleg Blu-ray, by the way. But this is not lost to time. It is just you just don't get this kind of anime anymore, and this is just so unapologetic, uncompromising, and brutal that it just benefits the story it tells. If they remade this and made it PG-13, it'd be utter shit, because the story it's trying to tell needs to be unapologetically brutal and uncompromising. But yeah, this is my U pick, Urasaka Doji. I've loved it since I was a teenager. I still love it now. It's brutal, it's savage, it's everything you would want from a horror anime, and I absolutely fucking love it. Hell yes. Next up for my V pick, we have The Void. All I'm going to say is go and see The Void. It's fucking fantastic, set in one location, Lovecraftian horror that I think everyone could get a kick out of. Practical effects in this movie are outstanding. The characters are all somewhat likable, and the monsters in this that you see, you're going to sit there and go, what the fuck is that? It is gross, it is horrifying, and there is some scenes in this where you're like, what the fuck is going on? This film is so good. I don't think it's had the love it deserves. Go and check out The Void. It is my V pick. It's awesome. We get to W pick. My W pick is Wishmaster. This film is hammy as it gets, really. Absolute 90s cheese, and I absolutely love it. Andrew Divoff just hams it up to 11 in this as the Djinn. He is so good in this. He's the heart of the film. You know, you go to this film to see the Djinn, and to witness just chaos that he ensues. There's some horrific scenes in this. The Wishmaster talks to this homeless guy who has an argument with this chemist, and then the homeless guy wishes that this chemist got cancer and die. And, you know, the Djinn's like, do you wish it? And he says, yeah, I wish it. And you see this chemist just get riddled with cancer. And it's horrific. It's horrific. There's some horrific moments in this movie, but it's also cheesy as all fuck. It's 90s cheesy at the best of the times. But as well, I think this film is just underrated as all fuck. It's so underappreciated, so underrated. I love it. Like I said, Andrew Divoff is the heart of the film. You think he's loving every moment of this movie, playing the Djinn. He's just absolutely loving it. And you know, what more can I say? He confronts Kane Hodder and turns Kane Hodder into a door and walks through Kane Hodder. That's all I've got to say, guys. Go and see Wishmaster. It is fucking awesome. I love it. For my X pick, I don't have anything that I actually really want to pick, because I have nothing that I can think of. I do have a film in my collection with X. That's a horror film, but I don't like it. And that film is Extro. So I'm putting this here because I've got nothing else. I was going to pick X from this year, but I don't own it, so I didn't want to put it on the list. I'm picking Extro, but I don't like it. So I guess it doesn't count. X doesn't count. Ignore this. Unless you like this film, it's fair enough, but I don't like this film. Let's move on. So my Y pick is You're Next. I absolutely adore this film. This film is just, it flips the whole script on a home invasion movie, and really flips it on his head, and really reinvents the final girl, in my opinion. The final girl in this is an absolute hardcore badass fucking femme fatale, and she kicks all kinds of ass, and she's smart about it. She's prepared. She tries to save the other people in the house by giving them directions and telling them what they have to do to survive. This film is just everything that I could really say that I wanted from a home invasion. It's not the best home invasion, in my opinion. I think Inside and Hush are probably better, in my opinion, but this is up there with some of the best, in my opinion, and I absolutely love You're Next. Absolutely flips the final girl on their head and makes this final girl cool as hell. I love this film. I think it's brilliant. The story's pretty interesting as well. It's not just about the blood and the gore and the final girl being awesome. There's a pretty interesting kind of a mystery story involved as well. But yeah, it's awesome. I like the idea of these kind of animal mask killers that invade the house as well. They're pretty cool. But yeah, You're Next is fucking awesome. This is my final pick for this video, and it is Z.
Whoa, look at that.
Z!
Lucio Fulci's Zombie, also known as Zombie Flesh Eaters, also known as Zombie 2. It gets kind of confusing. In the UK, it's called Zombie Flesh Eaters. This is a straight up masterpiece when it concerns zombie cinema. It's not my favourite zombie film. For the Z pick, it was the only film that I can really pick that I say, yeah, I really like this film. I'd pick this one. Yeah, Lucio Fulci, the godfather of gore, giving us just a wonderfully realised zombie film. This film gives us some of the most savage gore and probably one of the most fucking savage eye violence you could fucking see in a movie. If you've seen the scene, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, really like this movie. I want to get the 4K at some point from Blue Underground because I really want to check this out in 4K because I think it'll look immaculate. But yeah, this film is fantastic. I love the story. It's very simple in its nature, but it hits all the great points for a zombie film. And that shot of the zombies rising from their grave is just fucking 10 out of 10. Like, the way that shot is unbelievable. So that's my final pick. That is Z. That is Lucio Fulci's Zombie. So that is my first episode of A to Z Movie Club, and that is my horror edition. Let me know what your picks would be in A to Z for horror. And as always, guys, thank you so much for giving this video a watch. I will see you next time.
Z!
Bye.